All right. That clap is supposed to be some sort of transition thing I'm doing, and it's amusing me. But let's get serious. We're here for the Black Shield Maiden review. If you watched the other video, you'll know that I already did this review, and then tea got spilled in my laptop, and I lost all of it. But we're going to do it again because I've already written like an actual book report review thingy on it. And the two were kind of supposed to supplement each other, with the report being kind of like the meta-analysis that I took from the book. And then this video just kind of being like my chill recount of what the book actually was about, the plot, the characters, how I felt about it in general. And so I'm still gonna put this video out. I'm also working on a City We Became review for, a report and a book form that will be coming later. But just to hop back into this book, because like I said, already did this, so hopefully I hit everything. Black Shield Maiden is a book by Willow Smith and Jess Hendel. I suspect it's mostly Jess Hendel because I don't think that Willow Smith is really a writer when it comes to books. Obviously, I think she writes pretty decently when it comes to music. I love her music. But I picked up this book because I was like, Willow Smith is putting out a book. I have to figure out what this is about. This book is about this young African girl. I think it's historical fiction. There's some like magical elements to it that you could attribute to magical realism. Actually, mythology is very deeply baked into the whole embodiment of this book, but the way it's treated, you could, if you did not believe in magic, you could attribute all of the things that happen in this book for the most part to be just like people verifying things through their lens and their belief system, rather than like, oh wow, he spawned a duck, like that's just clearly magic. But I mean, there are prophecies in this, there are like guardian spirits, a lot of the way that the world is even constructed, the view of the cycles of the moon and the sun and everything is talked through African cosmology. We are going to talk about Yafeu, though. I said this in my first review, but you can take this for all of my reviews. All of my name attempts are my best attempts. I don't think that I'm going to get all of these right. And, I mean, if you have any corrections, feel free to let me know. But main character of this book is called Yafeu, and she's this young African girl that's growing up in this small village that's in like where present day Benin would be, around this kingdom named Ouagadougou. And I say around because like her family moved a lot, so it's not like they're really from any specific place, but this is the area that she's from. She's Soninke, that's the language and the people that she derives from. And she is kind of an outcast in her town because she has a lot of masculine attributes about her. She hunts, she is a pretty decent fighter, she smiths daggers and stuff, and these are all seen as things that are in the realm of manhood, and so people around her town think that she's cursed and that like her energies are off. She learns all of these skills from her father. Her father's no longer in the picture because around like I think 8 years ago from the beginning of the book, he goes and sails off with these people called Majus, who are foreigners, I think white foreigners. It might be a bigger class, but I think it's just like a term for white foreigners in that land at the time. And she's like, he goes and travels with them, and he's like, yo, I'll be back in a couple years. Homie never comes back. And so they don't know if he like died out at sea, if he peaced out on his family, whatever. But he was like this really big connection for Yafeu because she has a lot of masculine energy in her, so she connected a lot more with him on a like everyday level and even mentally than her mom. Her mom has a much more spiritual look at life. She pays attention to portents. She watches for magical signs, for spiritual signs. And her father and Yafeu are both primarily a little more on the skeptical side, more on the practical side. This is important later. The book starts with her hunting this painted wolf, who is essentially just like it looks like a spotted dog, but it's called a painted wolf. And she makes like this little connection with it while she's hunting at the beginning of the book, because she sees herself as like this little skinny, scrappy thing that, you know, is hungry to make something of herself. She misses the kill because she's hunting like some type of herbivore, and the painted wolf ruins the kill for her. And then she's like, oh shit, I wasted all this time hunting. I gotta get back to town. She goes back to town, and her mom is like, yo, you're late. We were supposed to be going to the market. We gotta go sell these daggers. If we don't sell these daggers, we're poor, we'll die. And these daggers are something that both her and her mom fashion. They go to like the main marketplace, they sell them. It's one of the things that help them get by. The daggers used to be smithed by her father, and now it's smithed by her because he's gone, but she passes it off as if he's the one still making them at home, because people don't really want to buy daggers from women. Another important thing to note is that Yafeu's name actually isn't Yafeu. It's the name that she assumes for most of this book, and it's like her alter ego to a certain extent, even though you don't learn her actual real name until the very end of the book, which I like. There's a whole like logic to it, but she assumes her father's name for most of these adventures, and most of the book she is searching for her father, and so it's kind of like a metaphor for a search for herself, since she is assuming his name and searching for him, and then at the end of the book she gets her name, whatever. Cool stuff. But Yafeu is not her real name, but that's what we'll call her until the end. She goes to the market with her mom, and while they're selling these daggers, these two dudes walk up, and one of them is an asshole, and he's just talking shit about the daggers. He's like, yo, I don't know what kind of scullery maid made these, but he must be shit at smithing, because these are terrible. And one of the beautiful things about Yafeu, which I like about characters in general, I love characters that'll just step into the shit, because it just makes for such an interesting narrative. Because of course, instead of eating crow and biting down on her words, Yafeu says, oh yeah, what if I told you that no man made this, I made these? Which, I mean, is a weird angle to take, considering he's shitting on the daggers. But anyway, she's prideful. She's like, hey, yo, I did this, and my work is cool. Homie gets pissed off, naturally, yoinks her up by the neck, starts choking her out, and her mom is going crazy. She's like, yo, please, like, spare my daughter, like, please. And homie is like a menace, so he doesn't really care, but he like throws Yafeu down, and he robs them of all their daggers, and then they peace out. And so Yafeu and her mom are now robbed of everything, and Yafeu had her ass beat. And so as they limp back home, sad and without anything, Yafeu is so mad. She's very mad at herself because she knows about her brash nature, and it's something that people have always kind of talked to her about. So she feels very guilty for making this thing happen, in the sense that, you know, she couldn't control her emotions, and it ended up with them losing all their daggers and walking home with nothing. So she's feeling really self-critical, and then that leads into this really beautiful scene, because like I said, Yafeu connects way more with her father, or did when he was there, but she connects way more with her father than her mom. So, you know, they have like a certain distance between them, where they kind of represent these two energies that are necessary. Yafeu being this brash warrior like person, and her mom being more of the nurturer, protector role. So they don't really see eye to eye in a lot, and because they have that generational gap with Yafeu being the child, like, you know, a lot of times as a kid you can get this feeling like, man, my parents just not fucking with me, but you know, they really love you and they're just trying to make things cool for you, you know, or like build you up in the way that they see being the best for you. So as Yafeu is building herself up, beating herself up and feeling so shitty and like ready to apologize to her mom for her acting brash again, her mom actually gives Yafeu a gift. I believe it is a necklace with wolf teeth. This is my like third review, and it's been so long now since I read the book, and honestly I could go check my notes, but I don't care. She gives her something wolf related. All right, if you want to read the book, like this is like a little teaser, so I'm gonna be spoiling mad shit, but I mean there's so much in this book that if you did want to get something out of the book, you could easily read it and get a lot. Like I said, whole report over here. But she gives Yafeu this gift, and she starts telling Yafeu how she's so proud of her, of the woman that she's become, and how she's confident that Yafeu will do great things one day, you know? And this was just like a really touching moment, and one that really showed like this really beautiful connection between the two of them, and a nice way to clear the air between the two of them before the next scene. And this isn't the next scene chronologically in the book, because there are a couple more character perspectives that I won't get into yet. But the next thing that happens in Yafeu's storyline is a raid. The next morning, or maybe it's in the late night, but you know, 3 a.m. vibes. She is woken up to screams and running and she's like, yo, what the fuck is going on? She hops up, she opens the door, and she sees raiders tearing up her village. Like I said, this is a village that really ostracized her, so she's not the biggest fan of everybody, but these are still her peeps. This is still her village. Like, she doesn't want to see them killed or captured or anything. And she's looking frantically everywhere, because during the scuffle she gets separated from her brothers. She has two brothers, by the way, two younger brothers, but she gets separated from her brothers and her mom, and all these raiders are locking them up and shit. She looks over through the fire and she notices that one of the raiders is homie that stole her daggers from town. So now she's feeling super angry, scared, but also a lot of guilt, because she's like, oh my god, I probably like caught his attention and then lured him all the way back to my village because he had to smoke with me, and now my whole village getting it. So she's feeling terrible. They're all getting locked up and shit. She gets locked up next to one person that she actually does know. There are a couple others, but they're not important for this recap. One person that she does know named Ampa, who is her only friend, but her best friend from the town. She's the only girl that really fuck with her, and she's like her right-hand girl. And, you know, the raiders pack all of the villagers up, and then they start marching them across the desert to go sell them at this city. And so the next few pages is the grueling trek for these slaves being, you know, underfed, given little water, just enough to make it across this desert hike, a lot of them dying and being left behind. And so Yafeu is really hitting like the depths mentally, watching her family and her village suffering. She still doesn't know where her mom and her brothers are, but she is watching everyone around her slowly die away, including her best friend, until they actually they have this moment where they pause, and her and Appa have like a really heartfelt moment where they're talking about making it, and how no matter what, we'll make it through and we'll go find our family. And, you know, I've been reading books for so long, and a lot of things are telegraphed. And I mean, in hindsight, this was probably super telegraphed, but I loved that moment so much that I was like, yeah, we're gonna make it. Bitch, no. They are, or she dies. Like, Appa literally, she's like, yeah, we're gonna make it. They go to bed, and then Yafeu wakes up to a dead Ampa, and she just fucking loses it, you know? And this is one of those moments in a book, and it's always a moment where I'm just like, bro, what is up with me? But when I need to truly connect with a character that is in one of these genres, and it doesn't need to be this traumatic. There are a whole many more books that like no death is involved, but I just need a moment where a character is faced to just look at themselves stripped of everything and decide what living on means for them, or fighting on means for them, or just what existence means for them, when the easiest option for them would be not doing whatever is that, you know? And in this instance, that was this moment for Yafeu. This was the moment where I was like, all right, I care about this character. Let's see if she can get her lick back, right? So after Appa dies, they make it all the way to this little town to then go be sold. They all get up onto these auction blocks, and in the middle of everyone being, auctioned off, suddenly there is an attack on the town. And so this, I think it's a couple ships pull up, and it's just a whole bunch of Vikings pouring out. 3 of which are part of this group called, maybe 4, but yeah, 4 are part of this group called Shield Maidens, which are these 4 warrior women that are like part of this Viking herd, HIRD. It's like their army, their bando brothers, whatever. But the leader of this herd is actually one of the Shield Maidens, one of the women. Her name is Alvtyr. We'll talk about her more because she's one of the 3 perspectives. But when Yafeu sees her, it's something that she's never seen before. In her small town, she's kind of ostracized for being such a warrior spirited lady, and here she's seeing women actually occupy that designation where, hey, this is what I do. I am a warrior and I'm leading these group of men. So she makes eye contact with Alvtyr, and a little something passes between them, and Yafeu just knows. She's like, this lady is my future. So with this attack going on, Yafeu is sprinting through, and she goes and she joins Alvtyr, and they fight their way out. She jumps onto the ship, and she's off, away from home forever, because like this is her escaping from her being sold in the square. But she just hopped onto a ship that was leaving, and they're all headed to Skringskull. Yafeu hops on the ship. She meets Alvtyr, the other Shield Maidens as well. I might give you the names later if I look them up. I don't remember them. They're not that essential, even though they show up at the end of the book. But she's on the ship. She doesn't speak any of their language, but she's just kind of hoping that eye contact, we believe in each other, we're locked in. We locked in. And she just keeps doing that with Alvtyr until they get to Skringskull, which is this little piece of Norway. It's this old Norwegian hall. I don't know if it literally existed before in history, because I looked it up and it did come up, but I don't know if it's the same Skringskull, but it is in Norway. And she arrives there, and she thinks that she's about to go and join Alvtyr, but Alvtyr is like, all right, I did what I needed to do, because Alvtyr is a raider. She's a Norse raider, so she wasn't going in there to free any slaves. They really just packaged up these slaves, and they're gonna go turn them into thralls over in Norway, which is like their slave class, their serfs. They don't own anything, they're servants. And so she sells Yafeu to one of her cousins. Yeah, her cousin. His name is Broskrap. Such a guttural name. And he is a dick. Like, he is awful. We'll get into that later. But she sells him to Broskrap, and so without, any explanation, because obviously she can't speak, she gets sent to Broskrap's farm. Broskrap has three thrall ladies, at least the major ones that we encounter. There is Brona, who is, I believe, Scottish. She might be Irish, but I think she's Scottish. There is Irie, who is Asian. I don't think that there's like a specification in the book, or if Yafeu would even know the specification for being from Ouagadougou. But Irie is Asian, Brona is from Scotland, and then there's Yafeu. And their relationship with each other is interesting because Irie is kind of like this house slave character. She's way more on the surface treated nicer by Broskrab. She takes care of his kids. She stays mostly in the house. She cooks, she cleans, that type of stuff. While Irie and Brona are usually in the field doing much of the harder and grosser jobs. But at the same time, Irie is also sexually harassed and assaulted and bothered by Broskrab mostly. You know, it's that dynamic. And so that's important for later because as time goes on, Irie, Brona, and Yafeu are all living together, and Brona and Yafeu get close, but Irie is still like, there's a little distance between them, right? And then one night, Yafeu goes out into the woods because she misses hunting. You know, now she's a servant and a thrall and a slave. She doesn't get to wield any weapons. She doesn't have her own free time. So this is like in the late night, early morning-ish. I think she steals like a little like kitchen knife to go hunting. And so while she's out there, she comes across this pool, and bathing in this pool is Irie in the moonlight. And Yafeu just stops and she's like, oh shit, like I don't want to disturb her. Let me just slip out of here. But before she can slip out of there, she spots something in the bushes. And as she peers closer, it clicks for her. That is a lurking Broskrab in the bushes. And he's creeping on Irie, and that makes her freeze. She's like, yo, do I act like I was never here? Do I like stop what he's doing? And before she can make that decision, he pops out of the bushes and he starts to try to, you know, I'm not sure what the proper terminology is for TikTok and YouTube regulation rules, but he attempts to sexually assault her to the nth degree, let's say. And she's not with it. She's like, yo, like stop. And he's like, you can't tell me what to do. You are a thrall, you know? And so Yafeu, seeing this all from the bushes, she enters Oof Heldnar mode. And I'll explain that later. But essentially, she goes fucking berserk. And like everything goes red for her, and this warrior rage builds up. And before she even knows what she's doing, she's up in Broskrab's body going... And she is killing this man dead beyond dead, yo. She is blacking out, and she fucking rips him to shreds. Like it's one of those it's one of those moments where you're like, okay, like he deserved that, but girl, like there is something going on with you. Which obviously there's so much going on with her. She unleashes months and months and months of pain and rage on this man's body, kills him dead 10 times over, which is why I can only kind of blame Irie afterwards, because once Yafeu kind of comes out of her bloodlust, she looks at Irie and she's like, yo, you good? And Irie's like, what have you done? Like, everyone is gonna murder us now. Now, the only reason I don't take Irie's side is because she's a hater. And, like, if you read the book, you can feel the different ways in which, like, she's become so accustomed to her position in life and the abuse, and avoiding, like, stepping out of that and incurring any punishments, that she refuses to help with anything that might get them in trouble. Even though she holds it down later on. So, I can't even put that on her. She's just kind of a hater, but she's a decent person, I guess. But anyway, she's like, Yafeu, you fucked us. Like, they're going to come after us. They're going to kill us. Yafeu is freaking out because she's like, yo, I did really like doing that. That's the other thing. Yafeu really liked killing him. Like, she loved it. And it wasn't really like she liked killing him, but she also just loved the killing part, which was like, ooh, red flag. But she is like, okay, we need to go tell Brona. The three of them get together and they're like, all right, we need to just throw him in the woods and pretend that this never happened. So they drag his body out into the woods and throw him in the river and hope that he just washes away, and hope that the town just decides that like he went on a trip. And that's what I think they deliberately start telling people, that like, yo, he went on a trip, and then they're just hoping like people assume that like the elements got him, because this is like 1000 CE, like there's not a lot, there's no security cameras, there's no GPS. Like, your ass can get lost in the woods and die and no one would know. But they actually do a pretty good job of finding out that there's something wrong going on with Broscrap, but that's for the future, because now we will actually switch to one of the other perspectives. Like I said, there are three, but there are two main ones. There's Yafeu, and then there's Freydis. Freydis is this white Norwegian princess who is the daughter of the king of Skrynsgård. Skrynsgård's king is called King Bali. We'll talk about him later. He's actually the brother to the third main character, Alftyr, the leader of the Shield Maidens, which, again, we'll talk about all that shenanigans later. But he is this horrible, corrupt king, terrible person. He is married to his wife, Ingvild, right? And he is really obsessed with having a legacy. And legacy at this time means a child and, your progeny to take over, specifically a male child. And he had Freydis all those years ago. I think she's 18, so he had her like 18 years ago. And ever since, him and his wife have been trying for a boy, and every single time it's stillbirths, it's not getting pregnant, it's just shit going wrong. So Ingvild has lost a lot of children, and it has fostered this hate between her and Freydis, because she resents Freydis being the only child that lived, and it being a girl, because Bali resents Ingvild for not giving him another boy. So it's this little toxic feedback loop. And Bali despises Freydis as well, because she's not a boy. And so Freydis' whole life, they just shit on her. And it's created this personality where she's very insecure, thinks very lowly of herself, and a lot of the servants and stuff, like, sometimes she'll pull her rank on them, but a lot of times she doesn't, and a lot of people just don't respect her because her parents don't respect her. And she's nominally a princess, but very rarely does that come into play, which is part of the themes of the book. But Freydis is this princess that's really, really trying to make her parents proud of her. And the main way to do that at this time is marriage for a woman. And so King Hakon, the reason why, it's not given as an official reason, but it's implied that the reason why things are going so poorly for King Hakon, this is for the childbirths and everything, but things in Skrynsgård overall are going very poorly. There are famines going on because the winters are getting harsher, their crops aren't doing as well, and he's not really good at looking over his kingdom, because he's kind of supposed to be this corrupt king figure. And like I said, there's an element of magic to this, so it's like, because the gods don't approve of King Bali, they are not blessing the land. So King Bali is really obsessed with making things better, but he's not actually looking at any of the issues. So he's doing all these bloody sacrifices and shit. And he's asking his councilman, Fritjolf, who is this seer man who, gives prophecies and talks to the spiritual realm. He keeps telling his seerman, Fridtjof, to give him prophecies of how to fix this. And every single time Fridtjof tells him a prophecy, it'll be something he doesn't like, so he'll just start beating the man and being like, yo, give me a useful prophecy. Like, stop speaking in these riddles. So he's just this very arrogant, bad, ham-fisted king. And that's because he's kind of a usurper of the throne. We'll get to that later. Freydis is looking to get married, and she's been in betrothal to this man named King Harold since she was a child. He's about her age, and her whole life she's been romanticizing her finally getting married to this dude, not being ashamed to her family, her and him having like this magical relationship and everything, and things just being itchy peachy, right? And so that is her motivations at the time. Altvir comes back with Yafeu, and then she goes to speak to King Bali, her brother. And she's telling him that there is a looming threat of Christian crusades coming to their land. They have a pantheon. They worship, Odin and Freydis, and, they're not monotheistic at all. So Christianity is spreading towards them. A couple of their neighboring kingdoms have converted, so they're feeling way more threatened. And so Altvir is Altvir. So Altvir comes to King Bali, and she's like, listen, we have to take this threat seriously. I want to go make this alliance with this dude, and who's king of a different kingdom. And she's like, I just want to make this alliance so that, if anything goes wrong, we can defend ourselves. If any Christians come in, we can, keep them out. And King Bali has a very big complex against her because she has always been the big warrior of the family. She's always excelled, and he got to be in the position because she did something very fucked up in the past. Also because she's a woman, but she also had gained so much respect that people were like, yo, maybe she should be the leader. But then she did something really fucked up, which I'll touch on later, but it made them be like, yo, maybe she is cursed for being a woman warrior. Let's go with Bali. So he's kind of like this dude that is sat in the seat even though he's incompetent, and he has lived through the successes of Altvir for most of his life. And her telling him how to run the country gets him pissed off, and he's like, listen, I'm not going to do your plan, but you're right. The Christians are a problem. So what I will do, instead of having my daughter Freydis marry King Harold that she's been betrothed to, I'm going to have her marry this other dude named King Hakon. Because in this area that they're in, there's Screensgull, and then there's two other kingdoms, and the kings of those kingdoms are Harold and Hakon. And so in their little area, that's the power struggle of these three kings. And so King Bali is like, we will align ourselves with Hakon. So if Harold feeling froggy, we can jump him. If the Christians feeling froggy, we can jump them. He has the bigger army out of everyone else. We'll go with him. So he goes to Freydis, and he's like, listen, that dream marriage that you were thinking of, scrap that. You're getting married to this old dude instead, because King Bali is this super old, greasy king. And he's like, yo, you're marrying this old dude instead? I don't want to hear anything about it. And so Freydis is like, damn, I can't get anything. And then she's like, okay, if I'm marrying this dude and so soon, because he moves up the marriage, he's like, marry this old dude right now. And so she's like, if I'm going to go through with this, I need a handmaiden that can help me, adjudicate everything and get ready for this marriage. And so King Bali is like, okay, I will grant you this. And Altvir is like, you know what? I have the perfect girl. So she goes and she gets who? Our favorite murderer, Yafeu, to come and be the handmaiden. And Alftir does this because she knows that, you know, in that connection, that eye contact, that whatever she had with Yafeu, she could feel that Yafeu felt that connection with her and that she trusted her to a degree. And she also recognized the skill of Yafeu when they were fighting out of the slave auction, whatever. So she's like, I can kind of plant this thrall there, and, you know, maybe I can convince her to do some stuff now that she's next to the princess, right? And so she throws Yafeu hat in the ring, and King Bali doesn't really give a fuck. He's like, yo, sure, whatever. And Yafeu is just thrilled because she thought they were coming to get her for the murder, and she's like, oh shit, I'm kind of low-key moving on up. Like, at least I'm not under this rapist dude who is dead now. But, you know, the further I can get away from this body, the better. And so she goes and she starts being a handmaiden to Freydis. Kind of. Because this is where the dynamic between the two of them is interesting. I'm sure a lot of black people read the synopsis for this book and they were like, a white princess, a black servant. I don't know about how I like where this dynamic is going, but I think that they handle it pretty well in the book because there's this theme of the difference between the accolades that humans bestow upon people and just people's divine essence of being who you are, right? Like, Yafeu progresses through a lot of social stations throughout the book, but the whole time you're supposed to kind of understand that she was always this queen that she eventually becomes, you know? And it's that pride in that moment where the dude was shitting on her daggers and she was like, fuck that, like, I'm standing for me, you know? She's always queenly in her bearing. And Freydis is like the opposite of that, where she actually is nominally a princess, but because she doesn't have that same sense of self, of power, of ability, and it's kind of, she's had this weakness fostered in her by her parents, she is spiritually very weak. And so when the two of them meet, even though Yafeu is the hand servant of Freydis, she's usually the leader of the relationship. She's dragging Freydis here or there. Freydis is usually trying to make these connections with Yafeu because she wants to be friends. But Yafeu is like, fuck that. You're my owner. Like, you're not my friend. And I'm really just trying to hide out because I murdered someone, right? Eventually, they do build this friendship for each other, but on the beginning, like on the shakier side, before they really solidify this, they have this instance where Yafeu is like, yo, I want to go hunting. This girl cannot stop hunting. She's like, yo, I need to go hunting. You, Freydis, come into the woods with me. Freydis is this girl princess that's like, yo, I've never done anything like this, but Yafeu, I'm gonna follow you. So she follows her into the woods. The two of them are supposed to be hunting. And instead, I mean, I think they do get into like a little scuffle. I think they actually see another painted wolf. It's, you know, more of that magical realism stuff that's threaded out throughout the world where you can, you know, she's meeting her spiritual self, and it's these moments of change and growth. But if we're talking narrative, what really happens in these woods is they find Braskrab's body. It had washed down from where they had dumped it in the river way back where, and it had ended up in this part of the woods, and it was just laid out. And while they were panicking, figuring out what to do, they hear two more voices, and Freydis is like, yo, we gotta report this, Braskrab. And Yafeu was like, shut the fuck up, follow me. And so she pulls her into the shadows, and these two dudes find the body, and they are freaking out. They're like, oh shit, Braskrab. Because, I mean, Braskrab was a piece of shit, but he was also a very important figure. That's why he's the cousin to the king and his general, I guess, is what you would call Alftir. But they start freaking out. They're like, yo, we gotta go raise the alarm. Yafeu is like, listen, Freydis, I killed him. She just straight up tells her. And Freydis stands 10 toes with Yafeu. This is how much she wanted to be friends with her, because she found this out, and she was like, listen, Yafeu, I want you to trust me, so I will help you get away with this murder. And She does. So, W Wing Woman. What can you say? Like, you are supposed to be my master, but you're following me into the woods, getting involved in my murder cover-up, and following me everywhere. Like, God bless, you know? And so, Freitas actually puts this whole murder case to rest because she instigates this fight between these two other guys over the death of Bra Scrap. Some lion shit, and so they have like an honor-bound fight, duel to the death over it, and then Yafeu gets off scot-free. It's some pretty cool shit.